Welcome to the Unofficial Elder Scrolls Pages. In our video today we shall discuss every process that you need to understand to perfect your enchanting. Whether you're a returning Oblivion player or whether you're here from Skyrim, this video should be helpful to anyone. We will look at what enchanting is, what it does, how to do it, where to find an enchanting table, the soul gem variants and levels, Azuras Star, the Sigil Stones, the differences between them and which one is better for your particular cases. We will also talk about the differences from Skyrim and then go into further detail about what the magnitude of the enchantment is, the area of effect, the charge, the duration, how many hits you can get per full charge, what those symbols on the enchanting table menu mean, how to maximize the usage and squeeze the most possible use out of your soul gems when enchanting, and then finish off with my best recommendations of many powerful enchantments that I personally use. So let's get started, and do use the timestamps provided for your convenience. Enchanting is the process of empowering your physical weapons and armors using magical properties of tools such as soul gems or sigil stones. Doing so will allow your weapons and armors to perform additional feats, whether it's performing more elemental damage with your swords, or resisting fire damage with your armor, or breathing underwater infinitely with your enchanted ring, for example. To enchant an item, you will need 4 things: an unenchanted equipment, an enchanting table called the Altar of Enchanting, just like the Arcane Enchanter in Skyrim. You will then need to have learnt the spell of the enchantment you want to apply on your weapon. And finally, you will need a source of magical power, whether it's the trapped souls in the soul gems or the power of sigil stones, both of which will be destroyed at the end of your enchanting process. With the sigil stone, you don't even need the other requirements, more on it later. In Skyrim, you had to dismantle and destroy an enchanted equipment to be able to learn its enchantment. In Oblivion, however, you have to learn the magical spell from tomes or from vendors who teach you those spells, to be able to apply the corresponding enchantment on your equipment. First of all, to find the Altar of Enchanting, there are 2 main options. The base game option, the longer option, is to go to the Chironasium within the Arcane University. However, to do so, you will need a recommendation from each and every one of the 7 Mages Guild located in the major cities in Cyrodiil. This will require you to complete a quest for each guild. The second, easier option is if we have the Frostcrag Spire Player Home add-on, which comes already added in the new Oblivion Remastered version. This player home itself is free and is a tower located east of Bruma, high in the mountains, overseeing the lands of Cyrodiil. It will have an Altar of Enchanting, which, however, will require you to purchase mage tallow candles from a vendor named Orlin Way in the Mystic Emporium within the Imperial City Market District for around 2,000 gold. You can purchase 2 of them so that you will also be able to use the Altar of Spellmaking. We can have a separate in-depth video about that topic as well. Once you have learned the spell and are also able to cast it, you should have the corresponding enchantment available in the altar's menu to be able to apply to your weapons or armor. You will then need a soul gem filled with a soul, which can be found anywhere, or a sigil stone which you can obtain when you close the Oblivion gates. So what are their differences and which ones should you use? For the soul gems, to be able to get the highest possible stats for your enchantments, use the largest soul gem filled with the largest soul. The largest soul gems are the grand soul gems and the black soul gems, both of which are able to hold grand souls and the equivalent black souls by the black soul gem. Black soul gems are very rare and are found as rare drops from necromancers, or you can convert grand soul gems to black soul gems by using soul trap on the altar where the grand soul gems are placed, at locations such as Dark Fissures, Fort Isterus, Fort Linchal, Wendelbeck, etc. on particular days when the Shade of the Revenant takes place. An unnecessarily long process for some, for the same outcome, and thus you can either purchase filled normal grand soul gems for a high cost, or find or purchase empty grand soul gems and use the soul trap magic on grand soul enemies, such as gloom wraiths, lich, minotaur lords, etc. to capture their souls. Souls of enemies such as Dremoras, humanoid NPCs, vampires, etc. cannot be captured using grand soul gems, and can only be captured using black soul gems. The black souls and the grand souls are equivalent in terms of power and charge, so you can use whichever one you have. The soul gem's a single-use item. If you want a permanent Grand Soul Gem equivalent item, which will still require you to fill it up after every use, acquire the Daedric Artifact Azuras Star, which can also hold up to Grand Souls, by completing a fairly simple quest for Azura. To initiate the quest for it, Azura's Shrine is located north of Shedenhall, and requires you to offer glow dust between 5 and 7 AM or PM. Unfortunately, you are not able to convert Azura's Star to a black star in Oblivion, which in Skyrim would let you capture any soul, including black souls from humanoid NPCs and other sentient entities. Now with the Sigil Stones, you don't even need to use the altar, you can simply select it to apply an enchantment on your equipment. They come with random enchantments with predetermined strengths. The top effect of the Sigil Stone would be applied to your weapon, and the bottom is for your armor sets and jewelries. The type of Sigil Stone you acquire when you close the Oblivion Gates depends on your level, ranging from Descendant, Subjacent, Latent, Ascendant, and Transcendent. The Transcendent ones are the strongest and are acquired once you reach level 17. The different types determines the enchantment strength. So, disregarding the difficulty scaling of enemies, in a way it is recommended to start closing the Oblivion Gates after level 17, so you get the strongest variant of the Sigil Stones. You can also quick save before acquiring the stone and load back to get the desired enchantment. So, comparing the differences in strengths of Grand Soul Gems and Transcendent Sigil Stones, in general I would advise to use the Sigil Stones on your armor, as the enchantments are typically stronger. For example, using a Grand Soul Gem, I am able to get 50 points of feather effect, whereas a Transcendent Sigil Stone can give me 125 points of feather effect enchantment. Even though you're able to find armor with multiple enchantments in the wild, using the enchanting table, you can only apply one enchantment on your armor. In Skyrim, you could dual enchant any equipment upon reaching level 100 in enchanting, which unfortunately you are not able to do in Oblivion for your armor sets. So a Sigil Stone is usually better than using the Altar and Soul Gems for your armor sets, given the higher strength of single constant effect enchantment. However, the advantage in Oblivion compared to Skyrim is that you're able to apply more than 2 enchantments on your weapons. The Sigil Stones may have a single high effect good enchantment, but it is not as flexible as a Soul Gem when it comes to enchanting a weapon. In general, it is recommended to use Soul Gems and a table to enchant a weapon than a Sigil Stone, because you're able to select multiple enchantments and further alter its power, area of effect, duration, etc. to create even more lethal combos than a Sigil Stone could. Now let's start enchanting and look at the menu and discuss what they all mean. First, you pick your gear. I will first pick a weapon for demonstration purposes, because armor sets are quite simple to enchant, as their constant effects are self-explanatory and doesn't require the use of the various confusing scales. I have picked a Daedric Longsword. For the best soul gem from my inventory, I can either pick Azura's Star with a Grand Soul or a Grand Soul Gem with a Grand Soul. Now for the effects, it depends on what build you're going for. Let's go for a very powerful and offensive sword with multiple elements that can damage anyone and can also soul trap so that I'm able to recharge my weapons. I have picked fire damage first. Now we look at the second page. At the top you can enter the name of the weapon. I will call it Blade of Chaos Damage. You will see in a minute why. Do use descriptive names so they don't get lost in the inventory or confuse you when you have many equipment. A weapon named Oathbreaker sounds cool, but if you have 100 enchanted weapons in your chest, you will have a hard time finding a weapon with the right enchantment you want. Something like Sword of the Blaze that deals fire damage, or Blade of Siphoning, or Sword of the Vampire that absorbs health would make more sense. Now I can scale the magnitude, which will determine the points of fire damage my weapon will perform. 15 points here will mean my weapon will also do 15 points of fire damage per hit. As you can see, as the magnitude goes up, some of the numbers at the bottom of the page also goes up, whereas the candle symbol goes down. Without going into too much mathematical detail, for example, a Grand Soul provides 1600 charge. 1600 divided by that 85 number gives us 18.8 possible consumption with your weapon. That will just confuse most people. That lightning symbol, in layman's simple terms, is the level and the power of your soul gem. With Azura's Star holding a Grand Soul, I have 85 power. I cannot enchant something so powerful and game-breaking that it will exceed 85 power of that Grand Soul. If I had picked a less powerful soul gem, like a greater soul gem with greater soul, that maximum number of 85 would be 60 instead. A lesser soul gem with lesser soul would allow us maximum of 25. So my enchantments would overall be weaker as we are not allowed to exceed that maximum number. If you do exceed that number, an error saying the enchantment is too strong for the soul gem would appear. So to get the most possible power, we aim to reach as close to 85 as we can without exceeding it. But making enchantment stronger will also cause the candle symbol to decrease. That symbol is the number of the uses, the number of times you can use your weapon on your enemies till it runs out of charge, before you need to recharge it again with either filled soul gems or filled Azuras Star, or from the mage vendors who can recharge it for you for a high cost, or the single-use Varla stones for your gears. But if it was very low because your enchantment is too strong, you'd have to recharge it after every few hits, sometimes after every single strong enemy, making the whole process tedious. A trick that I use is I have a weapon with Soul Trap and I hotkey Azuras Star into my shortcuts, so I can recharge it faster after every few hits when I capture the enemy's soul. You could also make the overall enchantment weaker and be allowed more hits before it runs out of charge. The final symbol is the cost in gold. Generally, the more powerful the stats of the enchantment, the higher the cost. The other scales, the area and the duration also determines the overall cost of the power of soul gem, the number of uses and the cost in gold. The area scale determines the area of effect damage, so your enchantment can damage on a wide scale. Ideally not recommended for swords as it may harm NPCs, your horse and companions unknowingly nearby, but recommended for your bow and arrow, like when using exploding spells aiming at an enemy group further away. Normally for my swords, I keep that at 0 so I can focus on magnitude and duration. The duration scale determines how long the enchantment magnitude effect lasts for. The default is 1 second. Now there is a trick to get the most possible damage for the least cost of soul gem power. Lower damage over time is cheaper than high damage for 1 second. So once again, lower damage over time is cheaper than high damage for 1 second. For example, I could choose 15 points of damage magnitude for 1 second, for overall of 15 points of damage, for a soul gem cost of 24, 66 uses, and 240 gold. But I could instead do 5 magnitude, so 5 points of damage, for 3 seconds, to equal also 15 points of damage, for a lower soul gem power cost of 17 instead of 24. 94 overall uses instead of 66, and for 170 gold instead of 240 gold. You could even do 3 points of damage for 5 seconds to reach the same outcome for even cheaper. However, this all depends on your playstyle and the weapons and the enchantments you're using. In many cases, you don't have 5 seconds to wait after each hit to get the max possible magical damage per hit. It may be impractical in most scenarios. So we have to find a good balance between magnitude and duration. For my fast-swinging swords and daggers, I keep the duration to default 1 second, as they may not be able to reap the max possible benefits of damage over time. For heavier weapons, 2 seconds is ideal, and for bows I keep it to 2 or even 3 seconds as it may take around 3 seconds to reload and aim properly after every successful hit. Again, this depends on your playstyle and also the enchantments used. So going back to our Blade of Chaos damage, instead of doing 40 points of fire damage for 1 second and almost using up all the power of the soul gem, with just one enchantment which wouldn't even be functional against enemies resistant to fire, we're going to do 16 points of fire damage, 15 points of shock damage, 15 points of frost damage, and 4 seconds of soul trap. That reaches the maximum of 85 soul gem power, with 18 uses, for a cost of 850 gold. You can play around and reduce the soul trap duration, or change the elemental damage magnitude around, as long as you don't exceed 85. You could put more points into shock damage, for example, as you may be facing more enemies that are less resistant to it. Just make sure to hotkey Azuras Star so that you can make up for that fairly low 18 uses of that weapon before needing recharging. I called it Blade of Chaos damage because it's similar enchantment to Skyrim's Chaos damage enchantment, where you had 50% chance to deal X amount of fire, frost or shock damage. Only difference here is it's not chance based. Another example is something I call the Sword of the Vampire or Rejuvenation, where I have absorbed 13 points of health, magicka and fatigue for 1 second each on every hit, plus 3 seconds of soul trap. I usually have few seconds of soul trap because sometimes I use destruction magic to finish enemies, and also as a habit from Skyrim because you would need a hand free to cast spells there. In Oblivion you could go for a simply fully offensive or absorption build and then use the soul trap as a spell instead, so that way you get more magnitude and damage overall. Another example build for a weapon is something I call the Bane of Destruction, where I have fire damage, frost damage and shock damage of 13 points for 1 second each. Then weakness to fire, frost and shock at 100% magnitude for 1 second each. And then weakness to magic at 100% magnitude for 1 second. I place the elemental damages first and then the weaknesses last, so that the next hit can benefit from the previous weakness magic hit. You could also add soul trap on top, but it will reduce the number of uses, the candle symbol. For a slower weapon, you can play around with the duration, so you could have 100% elemental and magic weaknesses for 2 seconds, and reduce the magnitude of fire, frost and shock damage, but increase its duration as well. There are many other possible powerful builds, such as spamming absorb or drain agility enchantment to make the enemy stagger a lot. Now for your armor and jewelries, as mentioned earlier, I would recommend the Trancendent Sigil Stones instead of the Altar and Soul Gems. Enchantments such as water walking, water breathing, etc. have no magnitude, and in these cases you can use any soul gem, even petty ones, to get the same constant permanent effect. Some powerful armor sets combinations include a full chameleon invisible armor set, best for your Thieves Guild questline. With soul gems you can get 20% chameleon each. With Trancendent Sigil Stones you can get 30% each, so you can get full 100% chameleon with fewer pieces enchanted with chameleon. A common but powerful build is a combination of elemental damage shields such as fire, frost and shock. Again, a Trancendent Sigil Stone is superior. For example, a Grand Soul gives me 9% shock shield on self. A Trancendent Sigil Stone gives me 25%. Combining these elemental shields with resist magic should make most Atronarchs and mages very simple to deal with. That concludes this video. I hope this video was useful to you. Do look forward to more content, guides and updates on everything Elder Scrolls right here on our channel. Stay tuned with us at UESP, the Unofficial Elder Scrolls Pages.